On this episode of the Wrestling Strength Podcast, we have Dan Harding, who wrote the book Elite Youth Wrestling. Now, this is a topic that's very current and near and dear to my heart as I am embarking on my first year as an assistant youth wrestling coach here in Granville. I think that any, not just youth wrestling coaches, but more importantly, youth wrestling parents are going to have a ton of takeaways from this episode. Let's roll the show. Yo, welcome back to the Wrestling Strength Podcast. As always, I am your host, Coach Myers, and the Wrestling Strength Podcast is brought to you by Max Effort Muscle. Now, if you have been paying attention, we have an awesome transformation contest going on at maxeffortmuscle.com. This is the annual I Want Abs. It is a 12-week total transformation change. So it's not just about weight loss. It's not just about who gets the most shredded or who is the strongest. It is total mind, physical, and body transformation. Now, kind of as the carrot we like to dangle out there because we like to put a date on the calendar so you have something to work towards. We got some great prizes at the end. Last year we gave away Mercedes-Benz. This year for I Want Abs, we're giving away a Cadillac Escalade. It's all black. It's the ESV, so it's the extended cab. It's the big one. That is the grand prize. One lucky winner is going to win a Cadillac Escalade. Second prize is $5,000 in cash. We have a Gucci watch. We have a PS5. We have an ice barrel. We have all these different prizes that are, just absolutely tremendous. And really, the ultimate prize, whether you win first place or whether you're in 2000th place, is being able to make a lasting change, not just in your body, in your, your fitness level, but I believe in your mindset and your habits, and that is going to be able to benefit you for the rest of your life. So to qualify for I Want Abs, the first thing you need to do is go to maxeffortmuscle.com and order your XL Stack so you can get started. An XL Stack is any 5 supplements, plus you get to pick a free super soft t-shirt and a shaker. We throw that in there. What I recommend for my guys right now, if you're starting the I Want Abs contest, you're going to want to get that stim-free fat burner. You're going to want to get the sleep product, which is my favorite. That way you can get a good night's, good quality rest at night. You're going to want to get the amino recovery. I'm a fan of the plant protein, but you could go with our tri-blend protein as well. And then you're going to want to either go with the Mega D or the greens, especially if you're not a big vegetable eater. Get that greens product. It's stevia sweetened, it's raspberry flavored, and it tastes delicious. So once you order your XL Stack, then you're going to need to either join CoachMyers.com or the Corey G Fitness app. Obviously, if you are interested in wrestling style training, you want to join CoachMyers.com, and you will be able to send in your before pictures. Get registered. Once you register with us, even if let's say you order your XL Stack today and you're not ready to start until next week, once you register and send in your time-stamped before pictures, that's when the clock starts running, your 12-week start, and you got 12 weeks to change your life and to win a Mercedes. Actually, not a Mercedes-Benz. That was last year. You're going to win a Cadillac Escalade, $5,000 in cash, or a ton of other prizes. Again, for all information on the I Want Abs contest, go to maxeffortmuscle.com. Now, we also have another sponsor here at the Wrestling Strength Podcast, and that is Ice Barrel. Ice Barrel is a cold therapy training tool that makes it simple and easy to bring ice baths to your routine. Now, if you follow me on Instagram or if you follow my Coach Myers Facebook account, then you probably see Ice Barrel is something that I use every week as part of my contrast therapy. I, go back and forth between the sauna and the Ice Barrel, and I've been using this weekly for well over a year now. And it has been an absolute game changer. I sleep better. I have much lower levels of inflammation. And for me, not just the physical benefits that I feel from using my Ice Barrel and using the contrast therapy with fire and ice, but mentally, just my stress level has been lowered tremendously. I feel like it really turns down the volume on anything else that happens throughout the day or the work week. I'm able to kind of, when roadblocks pop up in business, as they always do, I'm able to really think very clearly and able to navigate around them. And it has just really been an absolute game changer for me. So anyone who either A, works in a high stress environment, which I think we all do, or is an elite level athlete or trains like an elite level athlete can definitely benefit from using an Ice Barrel in their weekly recovery routine. It's durable, it's compact, it's portable, it's lightweight. You can throw it on your shoulder and carry it around. It's made in the USA, actually right here in Ohio, using 100% recycled materials. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and financing is available. Now, with its sleek design and compact footprint, Ice Barrel makes it easy to experience the benefits of cold therapy from the convenience of your home. And Ice Barrel is giving you, the Wrestling Strength Podcast listeners, $175 off when you go to icebarrel.com. And that's icebarrel.com. And you're going to want to use, I got two different codes. I got the code GUTCHECK, but because you are listening to the podcast, you can use the code WRESTLING. Use wrestling. That's going to give you more money off. That gives you $175 off your Ice Barrel at icebarrel.com. Again, use promo code wrestling at icebarrel.com. Get colder and feel better. Woo! I'll tell you what, that was a professional ad read right there. I'll tell you what, I'm super pumped about my guests I have today. I've known this guy for a long time, but really, we've only communicated via email and DM and stuff like that. I've even, kind of contributed to a project that he had that he's going to be able to talk about today. But this is going to be the first time we've actually sat down and had a nice long conversation. So I'm really pumped about it. My guest today is a former high school and college wrestler who has now been coaching youth wrestling for the past 15 years. And he even wrote the book on youth wrestling. Elite Youth Wrestling is the book by my man, Dan Harding. Dan, what's going on, man?
Hey, nothing much. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor to collaborate again.
Yeah. So, like I said, man, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because for the first time in my life, I am a youth wrestling coach this year. This is a whole different ball game.
That's right. Big year. And how's it been going so far as we make that transition?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what. I mean, it's harder than it looks. I'll say that right off the bat.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm just the assistant coach, but there was there's been a couple practices where our head coach, Coach Lejeune, who does a great job, wasn't able to be there, and I had to take the reins and put together the practice plan. And I'll tell you what, I was exhausted. I was like, man, this feels harder to me than running 20 college kids through a strength workout. And I remember I told him the next day or the next practice, I said, Jamie, I don't know how you do it, man. This is a lot harder than it looks. So maybe why don't you touch on that for me a little bit? Just kind of the dynamics of training youth athletes versus maybe elite athletes that are closer to the finished product.
Yeah, no, that's a great point about being so exhausted. Because to me, a great youth coach is one that brings the energy, right? So it's like I feel like if you're coming in, you had a long day, a lot of meetings. You're coming in at a 6. You expect these kids to be coming in wrestling at a 4. They feed off the energy that you bring into the room. So for me, if I gotta sit in the car for a few minutes, listen to some motivational videos or check out some of your content just to get myself amped up. Because when you walk in that door, those kids are immediately feeding off you. They don't care if you had a long day, a lot of meetings, and you hit traffic on the way. You gotta absolutely bring the energy, bring the enthusiasm, and hopefully they feed off that. I'll come walking into the room, you're clapping, you calling the kids out by name, and just gets everything out on the right foot. And with kids, it's got to be high energy all the time to really keep their attention, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the biggest challenge for me, or maybe even a surprise at first. I've been coaching for so long, but when I think about the space I coach in, okay, so you think about Ohio State, I'm coaching, elite level athletes. Even here at the gym, I work with high school and junior high athletes, year round. But these are kids, they're choosing, or their parents are choosing, however you want to look at it, to bring them here. They're kids that want to be good. They're already kids maybe that either have some talent or they have aspirations to be very good. When you're in a typical youth, especially we're just tied to the local high school here, this isn't a private school where kids are transferring in for the program or something. These kids all aren't motivated to be the best wrestler in the world. Some of them are very focused and they want to be good. Some of them are just, it's something to do in the wintertime. And I don't think I was ready for that or had ever even really realized of the span of, what type of motivated kids or what type of workers I was going to see in that room, when I'm used to really seeing the kids that come here to old school gym, whether they're, a quote unquote beginner or they're a multi-time state champ, they're kids that they want to work hard and that's why they're here.
Right. And it's an amazing thing, especially at the youth level where you can have a room with all different skill levels, but it only takes 2 or 3 kids that are messing around. And man, that is contagious. That spreads like wildfire. And next thing you know, you lose control over the whole practice. You just have a total meltdown. So it's yeah, it's bringing that energy, like keeping everybody in line, and it's a lot of, takes a special person and a lot of effort. So, but I feel like you'd be up for the challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I think, sometimes I've had to remind myself, like, all right, these kids are 8, 9, 10 years old. I sometimes have to dial back my style motivation, which is like trying to
Mhm.
tap into, like, you know, when I'm working with young athletes, I try to tap into, like, if they're a grown man, I'm trying to tap into like their sense of who they see themselves as a man and as a competitor and as a human being. And
Yeah.
when it's a younger kid, a junior high, high school kid, I'm trying to tap into where do they see their life going, that type of thing. 8,
Hmm.
9, 10 year olds don't really think like that yet. So I
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
kind of dial it back. Like I might need to just, bark and like run around and clap and do like those simple things you're talking
yeah.
about. I one of the practices I ran, last week, and it's the night before our first duel, and our head
Mhm.
coach isn't there, and we're getting ready for a big rivalry. It's our first duel, and we're wrestling Newark. It's the team right down the street. They're always stacked at the youth level, and we went through our warm ups. I had them hand fighting and doing a bunch of stance motion, got a good sweat. And I'm getting ready, I'm giving them a little like rah speech while they catch their breath, and we're getting ready to go into some focus drilling. And a kid raises his hand, and I said, "Yeah, what?" I thought he had a question about the practice. He goes, "Can we play dodgeball today?"
Oh my God.
I said, "Dodgeball?" I said, "Why would you want to play dodgeball?" He said, "Well, I want to play a game." I said, "The game is we got to beat Newark."
Right,
So
right.
you think like, number one, I mean, it's just that type of kid or whatever. But I thought like this whole big speech I gave him just went completely over his head.
These
You
kids,
know?
they live one day at a time, man. Their biggest concern is what we're doing at the end of practice. Like you just said, dodgeball. It's something beautiful about that. There's something so simple, but yeah, you gotta like totally step back and be like, what is this kid's priority? He wants to maybe show off, show his coaches that he can hit that double leg really well, and he wants to play a game and go home and have ice cream. I mean, it's yeah, you're dealing with a different mindset, that's for sure.
So now you said you have coached youth wrestling for a long time, right?
I have, yeah. I started in 2005. My dad started a program in our hometown. I was in high school at the time, but that was really my start, and that allowed me to see how a program starts from scratch, everything that's involved. And yeah, I got my foot in it pretty early, and I really loved it from an early age. Is you, the foundation level, it's so important in today's world, and we've seen it go bad in a bad way too. So um, yeah, to be a good youth coach, get these kids set up for junior high and high school where really the life lessons are instilled is crucial.
Well, that's I think for myself as a parent. I mean, obviously, I'm coming out and helping with the team because my kid's on the team now.
Sure.
My ultimate goal for him is number one to obviously to work hard and compete, and I want him to win and all that stuff. But the
Hmm.
ultimate goal is I want him to get to junior high and still like wrestling. Still want to improve and not feel like he's being forced to do it. And I feel like if I can do that over the next 3 years, then I'll win.
Yeah.
If he gets to seventh grade and he's burned out because we're on this year round competition schedule and he looks at it as like a chore, then I'll feel like I have failed. Because I've seen so many kids, even kids that have came up through my gym that were, phenomenal high school wrestlers. And then, they're talented enough to wrestle at the next level. But after maybe 1 year in college, they burn out and they're done, or they
Mhm.
just really after that senior year, they're like, no way, I'm done with this because it's consumed so much of their life.
It's so hard of a sport that if you don't enjoy it, or if you're really just doing it for mom and dad or a coach, it's brutal. The ups and downs of the sport are so hard that if you don't love it. And I also coach a high school team here in Connecticut, and we're seeing a couple kids maybe that have wrestled for a long time, that they're doing it, they'll finish it, but they also, part of them can't wait till it's over. And to me, that's one of the saddest things. This should be some great years in your life. You get to be a competitor. You get a team with all your buddies.
Yeah, this is what all the work has been for, right? Like
It's exactly, this is the time. This is the reward. This is the time you get that. Yeah, this is the time to get the reward for all that hard work. And if you hate it, it's brutal, hard to watch.
Now, as far as like I was never a great wrestler. I didn't start wrestling
Mm,
until high school. So I don't have this, long background in the sport. My wrestling IQ, I would say, is very low from a technical standpoint.
mm,
So like, one of the things that I've always worked with my kid, I mean, I can't really show him the very finer technical points that an elite coach can.
mm.
But I've always, I've taught him how to, the simple things about pressure and how to compete. And I think one of the things that has helped him, well, no, there's a couple things that help. Number one that has helped him is obviously being in the gym and learning how to use his body and getting very strong and learning how to be physical. But also too, understanding how to do things with a lot of effort. And I think that's carried over to now. He has a drill partner who's better than him, a little bit bigger than him, and much more experienced than him. And he understands. And now that partner has helped him understand how to drill at a high level. High level for a youth athlete. And now I've seen him. His progression this year, just in the last month or 2 months, or how long it's been, has been like astronomical. So I feel like that's such a key for kids to understand how to drill. I feel like it's more important than the competition or anything else.
It's such a crucial part, and it's definitely something I dedicate a section of the book to is finding your own partner, because wrestling, I feel like it's unique from other sports where coaches pair you up, right? You got your starting five, or your offense and defense. The coach is so involved in where you go. In wrestling, even at the youth level, there's so many kids that largely coaches at a level will be like, okay, find a partner and start drilling. And the kids don't really understand this, and a lot of times new wrestling parents don't understand that. Listen, it's up to the kid. I've had parents come up to me like, I really don't want my son wrestling with Jake. He distracts him too much. It's like, okay, well, I'll keep an eye out for that, sure, but really teach your kid that it's up to him to go try to find a partner before practice, and that's really a great lesson in life. In early on, teaching them, you feed off who you surround yourself with. It's you get out of your comfort zone for a young kid, third, fourth, fifth grades, to go call out a drill partner ahead of practice. But again,
and for them to recognize, like, okay, is this partner beneficial for me? Are we helping each other? Like, for them to really understand that, outside of just, am I beating this kid or are they beating me type of
or is he my friend? We have a certain, he's not going to hurt me. We're friends. We ride the same bus to school together. So I'm going to pick him because I'm comfortable with that person. Well, it's a phenomenon we see all the way through high school. I'm going to have a talk with some of my kids today, be like, are you with the right partner, or are you with the partner that makes you comfortable? I mean, you gotta sometimes get in there and force a rotation, but it's one of the great lessons in life and in our sport, and a big misconception for parents. Parents shouldn't complain to the coach. You got to teach the kid, like, hey, it's important to have a good practice partner. It's important to surround yourself with good friends, good coaches and stuff.
Well, I think I think you hit the nail on the head there. With the parents need to understand, and I even kind of had to have a heart to heart with a parent that came in. We had an issue. We have two wrestlers that were matched up, and one is definitely a little bit more. I would say one is more athletic and a little bigger. The less athletic and not as big one is more skilled, and the more skilled one was actually beating up on the bigger, more athletic one, and was getting frustrated to the point ended up kind of shoving the kid or something. And again, these are like 8-9-year-old kids, but they're trying to drill, and the one kid, every time the more skilled kid would shoot in, just kind of fall over on their back. And so I think out of frustration, it turned into like kind of a, and obviously they shouldn't have done that, but the mom comes in the next day and was like, hey, well, my son said, so and so shoving him and like kicked him or something. I said, well, look, I think we got two things going on here. Number one, I think that your son is probably getting frustrated because this is a more skilled wrestler and they feel like they're not able to do anything, and maybe they're losing a little bit. I said, but your son is also not giving very good effort and is just not being a good drill partner. So I think there's some frustration there, and I think that was kind of a shock to the parent to hear. They're like, well, my son's usually a hard worker. I said, well, I'm not saying they're not a hard worker, but I'm saying in this scenario, they're not giving very much back, and I think they're both really frustrated. So obviously we found them different drill partners, but I think you have to be truth tellers to these parents. You can't just
have to. It's hard. And that's, you talk about what's one of the challenges of being a youth wrestling coach. I mean, the kids are the easy part. I love the kids. It's really, sometimes the parents are amazing, fully supportive, all in, and then some are challenges, and normally not because they're not good people or they don't want the best from their kids. I see a lot of need where a lot of them are still new to our sport. Wrestling is our lives. We're consumed by it, but there's so many families out there, whether they're, maybe they just come from a football family or a basketball family, and this, their kid picked up the flyer in school and are trying out wrestling for the first time. We're so unique. There's so many elements to it that sometimes they just need to be educated. And that sounds like what you helped do the other day.
So here's something that I'm finding challenging, because I think, wrestling is such a hard sport, and the learning curve, I feel like it takes so long, especially if it's something that doesn't really come natural to the kid. You know,
Yeah.
their first year, they're just a fish out of water. Hopefully by their second year, they start to understand it a little bit. But they might not, you know, some of these kids, if they don't have a natural aptitude for it, they might not find any success until year 3, year 4, year 5, whatever. But we lose so many of those kids between year 1 and whatever that first taste of success is. And for me as a coach, you know, and as a parent, when I'm in the practice, I can't put a ton of energy into the kid that still doesn't really understand how to stay in his stance or to how to, you know, really, you know, tie inside versus, you know, coming up here. And you help those kids a little bit, but also selfishly, I need to put a lot of energy into my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the kids also that are going to be, you know, starting for our team when we have our dual meet next week. So what is your advice for coaches to still help try to bring those other kids along so they don't get lost in the shuffle and they can still progress and still want to be a part of the sport and we don't lose them before they get the hang of it and we never see them again?
Great question. And I believe that you rarely lose a kid in practice. You know, it's where you lose a kid is, I think, putting them into the tournaments when they're not ready, or putting them into the tournament, or putting them into too many tournaments when they're not ready. You know, you could be a little behind in practice. Odds are there's going to be a couple other kids at your skill level. But if you're really struggling with those basic fundamentals, and, you know, the dad signing you up for a tournament every weekend and you're just getting hammered, you really
That's
got
no
to have.
fun.
No, it's the word. That is the number one way to get these kids out of the sport. I mean, I've seen all kinds of wrestlers where they get hurt, where they learn to hate it. It's not the practice room. It's not as long as they get dodgeball at the end. Practice should always be fun at any level. It's the tournaments, man. That's I think the biggest stumbling block for youth wrestling parents.
No, Dan, that's an excellent point. And I think I think maybe that should be kind of the role of the coaches to tell some of these parents, hey, like your kid's not able to really compete and practice yet. Maybe you shouldn't take him to any of these opens. Let's wait till next year. Because I see it. I see kids right now that we have on our team that don't have any type of fundamental base, but they've already competed in as many tournaments as my son has this year. So,
Yeah.
and to use my son as an example again, you know, he wrestled in first grade. That was his first year. We didn't do any tournaments. We wrestled a couple kind of scrimmage type matches at the duels where they had like, you know, that other team had some extra kids that weren't starters and we matched them up or whatever. And they got 3 matches on the same mat, but we didn't do any tournaments. And then we had the COVID year. And then last year he went to like one club practice and got beat up and just didn't want to do it. So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to make him, you know? And so really this is his first, I mean, it's his second year and really his first real year of actually competing.
Right.
And now he has a feel for it and he's finding some success. But I feel like A, if I would have made him do it last year, or B, if his first year, because he wasn't, you know, he didn't look bad in practice.
Yeah.
If I would have made him compete a bunch and he went out there and got his ass kicked, maybe he would have never went back to it.
Right. And
So
it's not all or nothing. To me, it's like, you know, you want to try it. I mean, certainly, at least in Connecticut, there are some tournaments that are for beginners. So, you know, your kid's 1 or 2 years in, kind of struggling a little bit. Well, you can try a beginner's tournament, give it a shot. If it's a train wreck, you just got to have the, you know, the foresight as the adult, as the parent to not keep pushing it, because tournaments are a great tool when you get to a certain level for assessing where you're at. Am I improving? Am I developing? But if you're just really struggling, that's constant tournaments, constant losses. That doesn't really do anybody much good, and that's really comes down to the parent.
No, I definitely agree. It's you know, I think learning how to win is easy, right? Learning how to lose and lose with dignity is hard, especially in a sport like wrestling.
Yeah.
I was trying to, you know, I was explaining to some of the guys that work here at Max Effort that have never wrestled before. I said, as a grown man, I want you to think about this. Imagine someone else the same size as you is going to hold you down for the entire match. You're struggling to get up. You cannot, and they're punishing you. It hurts. You're basically in your underwear and you're in front of a crowd of people. I said, I want you to think about that as a kid. How would have you felt doing that? They're like, man, that does sound really tough mentally. I'm like, yeah, it's like the hardest thing ever to like get over mentally, I think, as a kid.
I love the way you just set that up too. Because again, you're in a singlet, you're out there on the mat. Now imagine you're surrounded by all your close friends, your teammates, your coaches. Mom's got the phone or the iPad out. She's recording it because you got to relive this one. Dad's screaming at you to get up. I mean, could you just thinking about all this pressure and all the stress? It's like, wow, you know, it's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask of a young kid.
No, it is for sure. And I'll tell you, you know, I feel like I've tried to bring my kid along slowly,
Hmm.
and because I want to make sure he doesn't get burned out. Even this year, even though he's doing well, I don't want to do the district tournaments and try to qualify for state or anything because I don't want him to feel any of that pressure yet.
Yeah.
We're in fourth grade. We got plenty of time to do, to travel for tournaments and do things like that. But I did also know, he's been off to a great start. He hadn't lost yet. I don't even think he'd gotten taken down yet in any of his matches. And he wrestled a really good kid last week who was a state runner up, the year before, and he handled the kid really well and, beat
Hmm.
that kid. And that was kind of his first real test.
Yeah.
But I'm like, he's gonna lose, and I just need to know, like, I'm not scared of him losing.
Yeah.
I'm scared of how is he gonna handle it. Is he gonna cry and throw a fit and like not want to go to practice? That was
Right.
really my
Right.
fear. Well, we wanted to test the waters in the open division at the tournament this past weekend.
Okay.
And I was kind of hesitant about it. I'm like, well, it's the last year we're gonna be able to do the rookie stuff. Maybe we should do it. But
Mhm.
also, too, I'm like, he's wrestling when he has wrestled the rookie kids, he's not giving up any points. And it's
Mhm.
almost in a way kind of not fair to those kids either if he's
Sure.
dominating them, even though if technically that's experience wise at what level he's on. So I'm like, all right, we'll test the water. So I get the bracket and we got Jay Jagger's son in our bracket.
Oh.
And so, Jay and I know each other real well. Obviously, worked together at Ohio State for a long time, and
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
kid, is the same age as Jack, but they're in different stratospheres as far as development and experience, and just technique wise. So
Yeah.
he got to taste defeat for the first time, and
Mhm.
obviously, I was proud of how he did. He ended up getting tech, but he didn't give up. He didn't get pinned, even though it would have been easy in a couple spots of the match to give up because he just really was getting overwhelmed. I mean, Jay's son,
Yeah.
as you can imagine, is very, very technically sound for a
Sure.
9 or 10-year-old or whatever. But the biggest takeaway, and more important than the matches earlier in the day where he won a really tight match against a really good kid, was he
Yeah.
came off the mat. He kind of had some tears in his eyes, but he
Mhm.
held it in. He didn't sob, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, he was fine. And
Right.
I've been dreading that, even really since last year when he had that bad experience and wanted to quit.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how's he going to handle it when he actually loses in front of people? And
Right.
hopefully it was one of those things where it wasn't just okay because he knew that, all right, this is Jay's son and he's really good. Hopefully, now when we lose a heater at some point, is going to be able to handle that as well. I don't know. So
Well, I feel like a lot of how a kid reacts after a loss has a lot to do with how the parents react after a loss or how the coaches are handling it after a loss. So I'm sure you're mirroring good behavior, and I'm sure everything. It sounds like you're rewarding his effort. I mean, following some of your posts, it's rewarding the effort, and the fact that he only was upset for a few minutes shows that you were also reflecting positive attitude of, hey, don't worry, buddy, shake it off. I love you. You got this night. Let's get ready for the next one. The kids that continue crying for 10, 12, 15 minutes are usually the ones that are getting chewed out, the ones that, and the parents, they might say the right things after the kid comes off. But, one of the big parts of the book and one of the biggest pitfalls I see in the sport is the mat side parent, right? That is usually, the ones that are usually loud and screaming, going nuts with great intentions. But more often than not, if a kid's crying after the match, the parents are probably sitting mat side, and they're going nuts the whole time. They're screaming, up, Jimmy, look at me, look at your coach, look at me, look at your coach. And it's so overwhelming that even when the match ends, they lose. And you're like, hey, it's okay. Well, it doesn't seem okay. You've just been screaming at me for 4 minutes straight. It doesn't seem like it's okay. Then that's, I think, when the waterworks really come. So I think you're modeling some good parenting and good coaching there as well. You get a little credit there, Dad.
Well, thanks, man. Well, I don't want to make this whole conversation about me and my youth coaching. So I want to know your opinion on a couple things. All right. So
Sure.
the
Shoot.
first thing is going to be, so speaking of mat side parents, what's your stance? Because I've heard the arguments for and against for kind of that mat side coaching after the match, where the kid loses the tight match, he comes off, and the coach immediately makes him down, say, look, here's why you weren't clearing the wrist or whatever, blah blah blah. And obviously the argument for that is, hey, let's work on it while it's fresh in their mind. And then obviously the argument for is like, hey, let the kid just absorb the loss and like get out of the public eye, whatever. What's your take on it?
It's unfortunately, I'm going to hedge on this one and say it really depends on the kid. I mean, it's usually your advanced wrestler that's maybe been doing it for 4 or 5 years that maybe forgot how to reverse a half, for example, or something like that. You got to know the kid that can take a little feedback and the kid that if he's coming off, he's holding back those tears. He's starting to mist up. He's not listening to you. This is not the time to learn. So
He's already
better go off, go get a drink. We'll give you a pep talk later, kind of thing. It's definitely a case by case basis, but a great question.
So along those same lines, what's your stance on the the dad coaching on the way home, whether it's from practice or from the competition? Because I've heard, some of my wrestlers, Colin Moore said that was it was the longest drive for him from, Chanel back to his house every day after club. But he said that's when his dad would, talk about what they did at practice and really hammer him about what he did wrong or whatever. And then I've heard other athletes say, don't talk about anything but wrestling on the car ride home. What do you think about the car ride?
The car ride, man, that's such a crucial time. You talk about kids getting out of the sport. I mean, it's tournaments is probably the first one. The car ride being a pretty close second, and more importantly, I think in the book I talked to Tom Ryan about his experience as a wrestling dad, and he was great with it. He's like, find the best club and the best program for your kid, and let the coaches coach, let the parents parent. This was also something that was echoed by Mike Moore over at Wrestling Mindset. He's like, it's so hard to be mom and dad coach or, coach mom and dad. So, certainly if they bring it up and this is not this isn't a law. You can certainly, there are times you can reward good effort or you can kind of correct, hey man, you're goofing around a little bit today, but the technique lessons and really getting into the minutia, I think more often than not, best left to the coaches.
So
what do you think?
Yeah. See, I'll try to just, scan over that. So my personal thing is, I always say I'm not going to talk about it in the car, but I still find myself doing it,
Yeah.
So even, it's so hard. I say, all right, you know what? I'm going to make the car ride about, hey, we're going to get ice cream or we're going to get tacos but I still find myself, I'll, just, my mind will wander. Next thing you know, I'm talking about, something he needs to work on or whatever. And it's a really hard thing because it's even something I'm telling myself not to do, and I still do it.
Right. Yeah, it's human nature. That's a tough one.
Kind of along those same lines. Me and Reese Humphrey, when we did a podcast not too long ago, and the subject came up, and we were talking about some of these youth wrestling dads, how they'll be some of these dads have never wrestled before, so they don't understand how it feels.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're mad side yelling, stand up. And Reese's quote was, he said, "You stand up, bitch. Like, you don't know how hard."
Oh my God, I know.
But the funny thing was, even though that's what I truly believe, and that's the way I think about it. The first tournament we had, and not so much with my son, but with some of our other beginners, I had to catch it. I caught myself yelling, "Stand up!"
Yeah,
and then and I'd be like, "Wait a minute, no, that's not helping him. I need to say, back pressure. Try to put some pressure. Bring your right leg up. Try to actually give them, coaching in little short things that they can digest. But that doesn't mean I still didn't scream, get up like an idiot 12 times that day.
Right.
So I think I don't know. It's like, I guess maybe in a way, this coaching experience has helped me sympathize a little bit with some of these like kind of idiot dads. I'm like, even myself, who like try to be really conscious and smart about these things, I'm still making mistakes that I roast these guys for.
No, and listen, it's easy for me to talk about too as a youth coach. My son's 2.5 years old, so it's I'm trying early, to ingrain. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be like that. I mean, we're going to play this. I'm going to play this podcast back in a few years, and hopefully all these things remain true. But no,
you might have to rewrite the book in a few years, right?
I might. I've definitely a couple of addendums. That's for sure. But no, the screaming get up one, that is that's a tough one. When the kid can only do 10 push-ups and can barely body weight squat 10 times, and these moms screaming, "Just get up!" Oh, it drives me nuts. And can you imagine being a kid, get your mom screaming at you, just get up? It's like, well, there's this kid on my back, Dad, and he's trying to keep me down here.
It's brutal. You brought up an excellent point. If a kid can't do push-ups properly, which I see this a lot.
Yeah.
The kid, they do push-ups like this. They have no core strength. They can't squat properly. How can you expect them to stand up when there's a kid on their back holding them down? So I think, and obviously I'm a very vocal advocate for strength training for youth athletes. I think it's so important. And I still hear from parents like this old wives' tale of like, well, it could stunt his growth. I'm like, you have your kid playing tackle football in wrestling for the last 3 years and they're 8 years old. You think they can't deadlift a kettlebell? Like
Right.
this is gonna keep them from getting hurt, not hurt them. So I think like really besides finding, a good, drill partner, besides finding an elite coach, there's nothing more beneficial you can do for your elite, or I mean, I'm sorry, for your youth wrestlers development than to get them into some type of structured strength training. It's amazing that more parents have not really bought into that yet.
No, and that's one of the the great things. I was super appreciative when you agreed to be interviewed for the book. It's you shined a lot of light on these misconceptions. I can't believe 2023. I'm still hearing it's gonna stunt their growth, or I don't want them to get hurt. It's like, well, I know I want them to get stronger so they don't get hurt. You quoted I think it was the West Side Barbell line. Was it tough? What was the line about something breaking?
Yeah, weak things break.
Weak things break, exactly. So it's like you're helping protect your kid by getting them stronger. No, that was a great point. Hey, one last thought, with the back to the parents yelling at the kids to hop up. Something we did a couple years ago. You might want to, maybe you can steal this for your program. Is either around like the holidays or towards the end of the year, we invited all the parents to participate in practice. And oh man, was this a learning opportunity that opened some eyes, because we had a lot of like former high school athletes, these guys that were like really into it, really screaming at their kids quite a bit. So we invite them to the practice and let the kids coach. And man, you should definitely give this a shot, because not only was it hysterical, the kids got an absolute blast out of it. But these parents, after jogging a couple laps around the room and just doing, we just had basic stance and motion drills. We don't have the insurance to let them go live, but we just did hard stance and motion, what these kids do for a warm up. These parents, and I love a lot of these guys, they were dying. They were absolutely dying, but it opened their eyes to like, wow, this is what my kid does for a warm up. And it just gave them a small taste of appreciation for what their kids have been going through. So
no, I think that's an excellent idea. I think even a lot of these parents, if they had to move around in stance motion for a minute and sprawl a couple times, they'd be like, wait, I got to drop down and jump back up. I mean, they would be absolutely gassed. And then I think, if the insurance waiver would hold, is maybe have them try to get off bottom a couple 30-second goes.
Oh, sure. I think you get away with little light drilling, but a lot of these parents, especially if you haven't wrestled before, you're not going to scream, get up, or you're going to think to yourself like, wow, it wasn't easier said than done.
I mean, maybe that should be kind of a mandatory thing for all new parents when your kid signs up. Like, okay, you have to come to one practice and you got to do a couple of these things, so that way you'll have a little more empathy for what your kid's going through when they're out there.
Yeah, it's. I remember when we did it a couple of years ago. We were really pushing hard for the end of the year stuff. So it was like we had the qualifier for states coming up, and we've been working really hard. And you could see some of the kids were getting anxious and nervous for the big end of year tournaments, and we did it at that point. Just again, half of it was just to have a little fun and break it up, but it really did that. And it was the perfect timing too, coming into the end of the year where the parents are all nervous and they're getting a little bit too chippy. It was good. It was a good reset for all of us, I think.
All right, so talk about the book a little bit. Let's hear about the book and maybe some of the other topics you address in there that you feel are very important that we haven't really touched on yet.
Yeah, no, sure. Thanks, man. It was my day job. I'm the editor-in-chief of a boating magazine, and but my real passion is youth sports and coaching. And in 2020, the pandemic started. Connecticut was completely shut down for all wrestling. It's high school, youth level, everything. I was at this point, I was working from home. My son was just born, and I found myself with a lot of time in the mornings and evenings hanging out with my son. And I figured, well, I could either get into Game of Thrones, or I could start playing video games. But I decided I was going to write this book for new youth wrestling parents that kind of gave them a blueprint of how to navigate our sport. Really, if you're from a wrestling family, this book still has valuable insights for you, but this is really designed for someone coming new, fresh into our sport, because all these misconceptions we talked about: strength training, nutrition, mental training, summer camps, when to go to a private club. There's so many pitfalls that every year you'd be kind of coaching these youth parents. And by the end, when their kid, if they got through youth, they got through high school, so many parents, and then also so many wrestlers would say to me, damn, if I only knew then what I know now was this line. And I kept saying, I should just write a book of all the things I've learned. And so that was the goal. And that's what I did in 2020 with some help from some really great interviews. I'm also not the world's best wrestler. I'm not world's best coach, but, talking to you about strength training and, Tom Ryan about coaching, I had Ken Chertow talk about summer camps and Mike Moore again from Wrestling Mindset, giving advice on the mental side, getting to interview these experts. I think it came away with with a package that I think can really help a lot of new parents. So that was the goal, to give back to a sport that's given so much to me.
Now, you've still been running the youth program that your dad started, correct?
No, so actually, I'm now in Connecticut working at a different club.
Oh, okay. But your son, you says 2.5. How old is he?
Yeah, exactly. 2.5.
So has he been kind of around the room a little bit, just like toddling around and stuff?
He's just starting to, and it's been such a blast. I mean, you come home from a wrestling tournament, he wanted to throw his little singlet on, or he step into my sneakers and say, want to go to wrestling, normally because he eats goldfish and, gets to chase the ball around. But yeah, he's starting to get a little taste of it. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. So at what age do you see like actually letting him come to practice? Well, this is going to be like kind of your get up moment. I tell myself I would never get a guy yelling, stand up, and there I was yelling it. So now with you,
yeah, real easy to say right now when he's 2, but and it's interesting because we have a lot of 4 and 5-year-olds in our club this year, and man, from a coaching point of view, it is tough. 4 and 5, you're honestly, as a coach, it sometimes feels like babysitting, not necessarily wrestling coaching. And I'm going to
go out and say I think 4 and 5 is too young.
I do too. It doesn't mean I certainly wouldn't bring my son and not to participate, but maybe just to be around it. I actually would love to bring him more up to the high school. I know he's not going to remember it too much, but maybe he remembers the feeling of coming and seeing other kids working hard. I think that you're never too young to be exposed to people working hard, but no, I hope, again, we'll look back in time, but I hope through the age of 5 that our matches and our wrestling practice take place in the living room or on my bed, when he's running around in his singlet, because it is such a long and grueling journey that I think starting too young is one of the great pitfalls of the sport, actually.
All right, so I'm looking at
so let's say 6. Let's say participating at 6, dabbling at 5.
Yeah, I think that's a good timeline. Like I said with my kid, I think he was 6, but he's a year old for his grade. So yeah, he was first grade, but like I said, we didn't compete that year. So
I think that's smart too.
I'm going to call you in 4 years, and you're going to be, I can't talk today. I'm out of Tulsa with my.
I'm at Reno. Yeah, exactly. Get up, Connor. Get up. What's up, Dustin?
Dude, I'm telling you, it is really hard. Like I said, the drive home, the get up, all this stuff. These are things that I've been saying forever, and I'm catching myself doing it. It's just really tough. So it's made me empathize with some of these other dads a little bit. So
yeah, no, that's a really good point. But no, I think, to your point of any other topics we cover, and I cover a lot of different misconceptions, everything from cauliflower ear and skin infections and to nutrition and all your great strength training advice. But really, I try to put a lot of emphasis on the psychological aspect of being a wrestling parent and not falling for those pitfalls, screaming from the corner and things like that. One area I see a lot of pitfalls is from well-intended parents giving pep talks. So maybe they're not like literally in the corner or being one of the screaming, but let's say their kid's coming up on a mat over there and the parents got such nervous energy, right? And the kids are ball of nerves. The parents are probably even more nervous, for their son. And God, I've heard some really bad parent pep talks over the years. And I'm somebody, I love a good motivational speech, but you listen to some of these parents and they're just so nervous. Like, hey, remember you got to sprawl and spin, and remember, you get that slide by. If he pushes into you, slide by or duck under. And they're just like word vomiting at these kids. And I see these kids, the heads are overwhelmed. Like, okay, run around, sweat, drink this water, eat. It's like, sometimes I'll try to break the ice. I'll come up to the parent and the kid and try to be like, hey, Johnny, listen, just remember everything we ever taught you at all times, and you'll be okay. And this is kind of way to try to break the ice and send the message to the parent, like, yo, A, that's my job.
Right.
Your spot's up in the stands, but like B, there's only so much they can retain. When I get a kid that's about to come out for a big match, give them maybe one or two things, like, hey, first 10 seconds, let's set the pace, or hey, be ready. I want to see light on your feet. Let's see some circling this match. That's all they can really retain when they're as nervous as they are. So
if you're telling them kind of like step by step technique as they're getting ready, they're bouncing up and down, getting ready to go out, they're not going to absorb any of that.
they're not. It's just gonna make them more nervous. They're like going through every scenario, and it's like,
I try to with my kid and the kids on the team, what I try to tell them before they go out there are very simple and broad things that is going to apply to the match no matter what happens in the match. I'm like telling them, hey, you make contact first, you dictate the pace, your offense, don't let them control your position. Little things like that I think, I'm not telling them what move to do or to watch out for this move, but just telling them, like, for them to basically try to dictate where the match goes, and wherever they take it, they take it. One time when I had Colin Moore on here, and we were talking about what he thinks about before a match or whatever, and he says he has a mantra he just repeats in his head over and over again. It's move it, heavy hands, move his hands, move his feet. And he said he just says that over and over and over again, basically like hypnotizes himself, so that he goes out there and puts heavy hands on the guy and doesn't just stay there. He moves his hands and he moves his feet. And I think, if as long as he does that, I think the thing is then he's going to wrestle well. So that is one of the other things I told, kind of early in the year, I told the kids, I said, think about what you want to do. If you want to put pressure into the kid and move the kid around, just tell yourself that you're going to do that. And then, hopefully the wrestling moves that we've practiced will come out of that.
No, that's such a good point. One other piece of advice, I actually wanted to quote you for a quick second, and talking about misconceptions. Well, you got a lot of good quotes in here, but when it comes to training, something I took away from you was getting involved with your kids working out. For a lot of parents, the kids that are getting into strength training or starting to get into the running, one of the things that you said with Jack early on was like that you guys were lifting together, and I think that is one of those major pitfalls where it's easy for a parent to say, hey, you should be running. You should get out and go for a run before school. After practice, do something extra, get some push-ups and pull-ups, start, getting on a strength program. I don't think any of us are ever too busy to get a workout in with your kid. And I think that's something, I think I saw one of your posts, you and Jack were just out there, running around the woods and swinging from trees and stuff. I think you got you have such a small window of time that you can work out and train with your kids, where you're, having fun with it. So I think that was one of the pieces of advice I wanted to steal from you and get out there for the pod.
No, I think it's probably the most crucial thing if you want your kid to not just do workouts because you're telling them to, but if you want them to buy into strength training, you have to do them with them. I mean, I believe it 100%. And I practice this all the way up to the elite level. I lifted with Colin Moore this morning when he was out here. Yeah. And today at 3:00, I'm picking my son up for a haircut, and then we're coming to the gym, and I'm going to lift with him tonight. So that's going to be my second workout of the day. So that's kind of full range right there. So yeah, I think if you're not willing to put in the work with them, they're not going to buy in. And like you said, you have such a small window of them being kids in general, but even at them being at the age where they want to do things with you. So really, like, if they're, I think just about any kid, even if they don't love working out, they love their dad. So they're going to want to be with their dad whenever they can. They want to do things. You're the biggest role model in their life. Mm-hmm. So even if left to their own devices, if they don't like doing push-ups, but if you do push-ups with them, they're going to like doing push-ups because they want to spend that time with you. They want that attention from you.
Exactly.
So no, it's absolutely crucial. If you want your kid to train, you need to do it with them. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do every single workout with them. And at some point, it makes sense to find them a partner. My kid has a really good lifting partner who we normally lift with, but he won't be here tonight, which is why. And then some nights he actually gets to lift with Corey's son, my business partner here, Corey. So it's been really cool. Like, and then I take them one day a week, and then Corey takes them a day a week, so they kind of get exposed to both training styles. So definitely once they progress a little bit, it makes sense to have partners for them. But, when you're at home and you want them to do these extra things, you want them to go for a run, or maybe they need to, then you need to do that with them, and you got to be willing to. And if you can't, dedicate yourself or get yourself into well enough physical condition as a parent to work out with your 10-year-old or go for a 2-mile run with your 2-year-old, then how much do you really care about their development? You want them
What better motivation to get after it, right? If you're
right.
not able to run with them, it's like, well, yeah, shit, I want to be able to run with my kids. I know no greater motivation.
No, there is no greater motivation. So and I hate the stereotype, but a lot of times, I shouldn't even say a lot of times, but I've seen oftentimes some of these wrestling parents that are the most fanatical that may not have even wrestled growing up, and they're not in shape. They don't, and I think even as a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old, or definitely as a high school kid, they got to be looking at their dad and thinking, Dad, you're telling me you want me to get in the sauna and run to make weight, and you got this big beer belly on you. Like, you have to, if you want to be a positive role model in your family, you have to practice what you preach. I'm very biased in this, in this area, and also very lucky because I own a gym and this is my life. But I think, if you want to set a positive role model for your kid and you want them to be a hard worker, then you have to do it yourself.
Well, Dustin, this is like the perfect transition. So one other thing I want to touch on is like the number one question I get as a coach. I'm sure you're starting to get it. Is my kid's too nice? How do I make my kid tougher? I mean, that is like at least 5 or 6 times a year I'm getting that, and it's a tricky question because I know what they mean, right? They want a kid that is very polite, great kid off the mat, and just that mean and nasty. And at the youth level, some kids are just naturally like that. You could have a 6-year-old that's just going to run your face with a half across the mat, and then you get some kids that are the opposite. But so often the parents, how do I get my kid tougher? And the only way I know, I'm interested in your take, is, you build some confidence through strength training and practice, but also by doing tough things. How else? Coaches only got you for maybe 90 minutes before dodgeball starts. That's got to be up to the parent to model that work ethic and doing tough things. And I think that just segues off of, you can train with your kids, you can run with the kids, but also, go do some tough things with your kids, model that work ethic.
No, I mean, you answered the question for yourself right there. You have to, you have to have your kid do difficult things and experience, me and Tom, Tom Ryan always talks about suffering. Obviously, we want to dial that a little back. We don't want our kids to suffer, but they need to at least kind of sniff it a little bit. They need to taste suffer. They need to feel what it feels like to be physically challenged and to be exhausted. Now, you can do that with strength training in the gym. One of the greatest tools, I think, for strength training, not just from a physical standpoint, but from that toughness standpoint, is sled work. Getting a kid to learn how to push a heavy sled and drag a heavy sled when their legs are burning and their lungs are burning, I think does a lot for them more than just the physical benefits. Years and years ago, most kids had to do, chores at home, and they had to carry water for the cows or, bale hay or whatever. And a lot of kids don't do that anymore. Even my kid doesn't have to do that, but I try to find things for him to do at home. So he has to stack firewood, or, he has to, when we're doing landscaping in the summer, you got to carry bags of mulch and stuff, because, very rarely are you going to have a kid that just naturally understands how to push and carry buckets of water further once his form's already burning. No, as a human, our natural reaction is, well, this hurts, I'm going to stop doing this so it feels better. So I think, and there are the outliers out there. I mean, we do have some kids, or there's everything. There's some kids that are just little like hellions. My kid was not like that. He's a very, very nice kid, very sweet. He's not, he might, maybe naturally athletic, but not naturally tough, so I think developing that in the weight room is key. And if you're not able to, or don't have the resources or the gym or the knowledge to develop that in the weight room, well, number one, you can join coachmyers.com so I can teach you how. But if you don't have that, you have to find things that you're doing at home and involve them in it so they understand how to work hard. Number one, when it's uncomfortable and when they don't feel like doing it. So I think there's some carryover there too with chores of like, okay, things are fun. Wrestling's fun when you feel like doing it. Wrestling is not fun when you don't feel like doing it, especially if you're not very skilled at it yet. So same thing with doing, physical chores around the house. If you'd rather be watching TV or playing, your PS5, but you have to, go mulch the flowers and carry things or cut the grass or whatever, then it's not very fun. But you have to develop that work ethic of, okay, I have to do this whether I want to or not, and I have to still do it to the best of my ability and try to, get the task completed as thoroughly and as fast as possible. So chores around the house,
Right.
strongman training at the gym, that's really the best way. I think screaming at them on the side of the mat and yelling, "You got to be tough," is not going to work.
No, and it's also you don't want to try to transform your kid either, especially we're at the youth level. It hits at all different ages. That's a common one. It's my kid's too nice. When has that ever been a problem that you got a nice and he's too nice, he's too polite? That you're doing something right, right? That's great parenting. It's that toughness, that grittiness that comes at all different ages. Sometimes it's 6th, 7th, 8th. Sometimes it's not till the kid's senior year, but it almost always comes. If you buy into the sport and you establish some really high goals for yourself, well, eventually you're going to want to knock out whatever's in between you and the goal. It'll come. Don't try to transform your kid. Teach them to score more points and win matches.
I had a conversation with my old man about this. It was maybe last year or something. I was talking about my son, and I consider myself a very hardworking, mentally tough, and physically tough individual. And there isn't too many people that I hold in higher regard than my own old man. I mean, he's just the epitome of blue collar, strong, tough. He was a roughneck back in the day, always getting in fights and all these things. And
Yeah.
and I was talking about, he needs tough. I mean, he looks at me, he says, "Son, how tough were you when you were 9 years old?" And I stopped for a second. I thought about it. I said, "Dad, I wasn't tough." And he said, "Neither was I." He said, "You need to understand he's 9." And I was like, and it really was an eye-opening thing for me. I said, you know what? Like, how can anyone expect any 9-year-old to just be naturally tough? Now, that doesn't mean they can't develop it, but to think that they're just going to be intuitively these mentally strong, unbreakable individuals when they're kids, it's really unrealistic to ask of any child.
Yeah. No, that's a great point and great advice from your old man. I love that.
I'll tell you what, Dan, I think this is a great place for us to kind of wrap it up. First, why don't you tell everyone where they can follow you, and more importantly, where can they find your book, Elite Youth Wrestling?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's available on Amazon, also on Instagram at Elite Youth Wrestling. And if there are any youth coaches out there that think this book might be helpful to their parents and their program, you can shoot me a message at Elite Youth Wrestling, and I'd be happy to talk about club discounts. And because to me, this is really a passion project. Again, like it's it's a book, and I do make a little profit, but it's about giving back to a sport that's given so much to me. So I love working with club coaches and getting books out there.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's been a while. We've been trying to link up for a while, and finally our schedules worked out. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And like I said, man, I might have you back on in 4 years when you get back from Tulsa and or out
exactly
showcase, and kind of see if once you are a dad, if you're not a dad, once you are a wrestling dad, not just a wrestling coach, if your perspective on any of this stuff has changed. So I'll be looking forward to that conversation as well.
Hey, I appreciate it. You mind if I give one last thought though before we wrap up here? My as you're on this wrestling coaching and wrestling dad journey, something that my dad did was he did a really great job of documenting my time as an athlete, especially through high school. He would he had pictures and he would video my matches back when they were on tapes. But he also had this thing, he would send the occasional email to a group of pretty close friends and family, just kind of updating them on how it was going. And he'd had these emails always super honest, where it's like, oh, the Harding boys had a great weekend, or Harding boys didn't, they got spanked. They, back to the drawing board, time to evaluate and get better. And he did this throughout. And when we finally ended our wrestling career, when we finally finished high school, he would hand my brother and I these binders, and in it had some of our workout sheets where we wrote our workouts. It had some newspaper clippings, but it had these what really stuck out to me. It had photos, but it also had these emails that he would write. And it was just, more than anything, I pulled that binder out when I was working on the book, and it was just such an interesting trip down memory lane to relive it. We take a lot of pictures with a lot of Instagram and a lot of social media things, but when you're spending all these days in the bleachers and stuff, it'll go by awfully fast, right? Like the days and those tournaments are painfully slow, but the years go by in a blink. So my last piece of advice, and definitely to you and to Jack, would be to do your best to document this journey, because at some point the singlet is going to be in a box in the attic, and these are just going to be memories that you kick around the kitchen table once in a while. But just try to document it, enjoy it. It's going to go awfully fast.
No, I think that's an excellent idea, and kind of where my mind goes. Obviously, I document a little bit of stuff on Instagram, but like I said, I don't want to be posting about his wrestling journey every week. But I do
Sure.
update, the grandparents every week, and I normally text them individually. But
Mhm.
maybe, well, not maybe, I'm going to this week starting.
There we
I'm
go.
just going to type up a quick little email about his week
Yeah.
and send it to them. So then that way we'll kind of have a record of it. And I actually started
Yeah.
a Gmail address for him that he doesn't have access to yet. So maybe I
I
will
love that.
CC him on there.
Copy him on it.
Yeah,
Oh, man. I got, like, goosebumps. That's,
yeah. So
it's gonna mean a lot to him one day, I
no,
think.
thank
Does
you,
good for
thank you
me.
for that inspiration. I think that's going to be an excellent idea, and for any of you parents that are listening, that like I said, that were doing what I was doing, which is already updating the grandparents every week. Maybe just condense that into one little quick email, and then that way you'll have a record of it going on.
Mhm.
That might be the best idea I've heard all day. Now, hopefully, he sticks with wrestling, and it's not like, hey, in 2 years, like, hey, you want to read about when you used to wrestle? Hopefully, we're reading it 10 years or whatever from now, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, when he's an NCAA champ one day.
Oh, that's
Those will be fun to read.
hey, like I said, if we can get to junior high and high school and he still likes to wrestle and works hard and competes, I'll be happy with that. And anything else will just be icing on the cake.
That's great perspective. Keep at it.
Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. Thanks, Dustin.